You know the music. You know the fame. But what if I told you that behind the Platinum Records' private jets and champagne-soaked stages, there's a trail of whispered threats, unexplained deaths, and lives forever shattered? This isn't a documentary. It's a reckoning. Today we follow the blood-stained footsteps of Sean Diddy Combs through 8 chilling stories, each more disturbing than the last. Stories of silence bought, loyalty betrayed, and a legacy built on more than just beats and bars. From the City College stampede, to the murder of Tupac and Biggie, to the mysterious death of Kim Porter. Some say it's coincidence, others call it survival. But after hearing what we uncovered, you'll ask yourself, was it all part of a plan? Make sure to hit like, subscribe, and turn on notifications, because what we reveal in the next 30 minutes may change the way you see hip-hop history forever. There are nights I wake up choking. Not because of a nightmare. Not exactly. It's something else. Like a pressure in the room, thick as smoke clinging to the air to my skin. The kind of weight that doesn't lift, even when you open a window or flip on a light. And always before I can shake the feeling, a single name echoes in the silence. Kim. That's how it always starts. You see, most people only know the headlines, the music, the diamonds, the parties where the room spun with champagne and billion-dollar smiles. But beneath the gloss, there were shadows. And I unfortunately was close enough to see them move. I used to work for him. That man, the one you call Puff, Diddy, Love, whatever name he's wearing these days. Back then, he was a storm in motion. He didn't just own the room, he owned everyone in it. I was part of the machine. Security assistant, sometimes fixer when things went sideways. I saw it all, and I stayed quiet until Kim died. It was November 15th, 2018. News broke early morning. Kim Porter found dead in her home, age 47. Pneumonia. I was driving on the 405 halfway through my second coffee when the alert buzzed across the radio. My hands froze on the wheel. They said she had the flu, that she died peacefully in her sleep. I knew they were lying, not because I had proof, God, I wish I did, but because 2 weeks earlier, I'd received a voicemail from her. A short message, just 7 words: if something happens to me, tell them. I never got the chance to ask what she meant. She didn't pick up when I called back. And now she was gone. I remember pulling over near the Getty Center engine, humming beneath me as I stared out at the LA skyline, washed in golden haze. I thought about that night in Beverly Hills 3 years before her death, when she stormed out of his Escalade with a scratch blooming across her cheekbone and defiance blazing in her eyes. She said just loud enough for me to hear, "Touch me again, and you'll regret it." That was the beginning of the end for Kim. People say she was the only one who really knew him. Not the artist, not the brand, but the man. The temper, the paranoia, the way he couldn't stand not being in control. She'd loved him once. God knows why. But by the time I came into the picture, that love had curdled into something sharp and brittle. He hated that she had stories, that she remembered too much. And worst of all, she was starting to talk. They said she was working on a book. I'd heard the same rumor from 3 different people across 2 coasts. One said she had a flash drive. Another swore she met with a ghostwriter. None of it confirmed, of course. Just whispers. But in his world, whispers get you killed. I think she knew the risk. Hell, I think that's why she called me. That same night after the news broke, I pulled out a hard drive I hadn't touched in years. It was still wrapped in a cracked leather pouch I kept under a false panel in the closet. I'd been collecting things over time. Messages, recordings, incident reports that never made the news. A digital graveyard of secrets. I told myself it was insurance. But really, it was guilt. On that drive was a folder labeled City College 1991. 9 dead, no one charged. That was the first time I saw what he was really capable of. But back to Kim. Her funeral was private, tasteful, cold. I remember the eerie hush that fell when he entered the chapel. All-white suit, sunglasses indoors, no tears. Just that hollow, rehearsed look he always wore when cameras were near. Like he was already editing his own documentary. I stood near the back out of sight. Nobody noticed me. I was good at that, being invisible, watching, collecting, regretting. Afterward, I waited in my car for hours. I didn't know why. Maybe I hoped someone else would come forward. Maybe I just didn't want to go home. But around dusk, a woman I didn't recognize slipped a small envelope under my windshield wiper and vanished before I could open the door. Inside was a single USB. No note, no name, only the word proof. That night I couldn't sleep. I sat at my desk, fingers trembling over the keyboard, watching the files load one by one. They were dated, time-stamped, archived meticulously. Some were text, some audio, some video. And all of them pointed to a pattern I tried for years to unsee. A pattern that began long before Kim. A pattern that, if followed carefully enough, leads back to a moment in 1991 when 9 bodies lay on a gymnasium floor while he disappeared into a basement with a bag of cash. I should have walked away then, but I didn't. And now 1 woman is dead. And I can't keep pretending. The city never forgets blood in its soil. The ghosts never really leave. And when you've carried secrets this long, they don't just whisper anymore. They scream. Before there were diamonds. Before the Grammys, the Jets, the whispers about $1 million bounty, there was a basketball game. December 28th, 1991. City College of New York. It was supposed to be a charity event. Something fun, uplifting, a night for the people of the streets. What it became was a mass grave with music echoing off the walls while people begged for air. I was there that night. I wasn't security yet, just a kid from the Bronx trying to find a way in. Got a tip from a cousin that Puff was throwing this thing with Heavy D. Said there'd be celebrities, free gear music, the kind of stuff a broke 19-year-old like me only saw in magazines. I finagled my way past the side entrance with 2 buddies. Inside was a madhouse, shoulder-to-shoulder, bodies pressed so tight it felt like you were drowning standing up. No exits marked, no airflow, no control. People screamed. Someone passed out. I told Puff what I saw. I swear to God, I walked straight up to him and said, "Man, if you don't do something now, somebody's gonna die tonight." He looked me right in the eyes, smiled. "Don't worry about that, we got it covered." He didn't cover a damn thing. What happened next has haunted me for over 3 decades. When the doors to the gym closed, they didn't open again. Not fast enough. Not for the hundreds crammed inside. No security guards clearing paths. No ventilation. Just heat, fear, and chaos. People surged toward the doors that were locked. I'll never forget the sound of nails scratching painted metal. The thunder of fists. Then screams. Then bodies falling. Some died on their feet. Others suffocated under piles of collapsed strangers. A 17-year-old boy collapsed near the water station. His mouth was open. I watched the foam bubble at his lips before he went still. And upstairs, Puff and his crew were gone. Someone later said they'd slipped downstairs with the cash box and barricaded the doors from inside. Took the money, left the mess. The next day, the headlines barely scratched the surface. 9 killed in City College stampede. Puff's name floated around, sure, but nothing stuck. No charges. Just some civil suits that vanished quietly in the years that followed. He never apologized. Not publicly, not once. He just moved on. Launched Bad Boy Records 6 months later. Signed Biggie. Became the man. But I remembered the faces. I remembered that sound, the one that only happens when a crowd becomes a weapon against itself. Bones breaking like wood. The wet gasp of someone too crushed to scream. You don't forget that. Not when you saw it. Not when you knew who could have stopped it. Later that year, I ran into Heavy D at a party in Brooklyn. He looked tired, older, like his soul had packed up early and left his body behind. We didn't know it'd be like that, he said, staring into his drink. But Puff. He was all smiles that night. dressed in a brand new silk suit, gold shining at his neck, already making plans for the next big move. He hugged heavy, like nothing had ever happened. And then he saw me. His eyes locked on mine just for a second. "You still here?" he said. "Guess you made it out." He smiled, the same smile he wore the night people died. I started noticing things after that. How he surrounded himself with yes men. How anyone who questioned him got pushed out. Quietly, permanently. And how the people who got too close to the truth, they either disappeared or died. Years later, when Kim left him for the last time, she told a friend, one I trusted, that she never forgot about City College either. Said it was the first time she realized he could walk away from bodies without blinking. She kept a file. She kept everything. And now she was in a coffin, just like the boy with foam on his lips. I don't know what was on that USB she left. Not yet. I haven't opened every file. Some of them are encrypted. Some of them are just static. But there's one short clip, dated December 29th, 1991, the morning after the stampede. It's grainy, handheld. Puff is walking out of a back stairwell laughing. Behind him, a man wheels a metal lockbox toward a waiting van. And right there, clear as day, is a folded event flyer splashed with red footprints wedged under his heel. No court charged him. No police forced him to speak. But I saw what I saw. And now I'm going to show you what they buried beneath the sound system and the spotlight. Because City College wasn't an accident. It was the beginning. He was the first one I saw that tried to break free. Craig Mack. People barely talk about him now. But before Biggie, before the Empire, it was Craig's voice that introduced the world to Bad Boy Records. His single Flava in Ya Ear went platinum, put the label on the map. But success in Diddy's world was never a shield. It was a leash. Underscore, 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 underscore. I met Craig once back when I was running security for studio sessions. He was quiet, polite, kept to himself. But behind those calm eyes, you could see the frustration boiling. He hated the politics, hated the way Puff would show up late, drunk on power barking orders like he was God's last gift to hip-hop. Hated that the money never lined up with the fame. "They owe me," he once muttered low in bitter pacing outside Studio B. But they act like I should be grateful they even let me breathe. I wanted to tell him, walk away, man. But I didn't. Because we both knew what happened when you tried to leave Bad Boy. Underscore, 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 underscore. The story that never made it to XXS or The Source happened in '95. Craig was fighting for his royalties. Said he wouldn't hand over the next album until he got paid what was owed. No lawyer, no backup, just a man standing his ground. A meeting was arranged, neutral ground, one of Puff's downtown offices. Craig showed up on time, alone. But Puff wasn't there yet. Instead, 3 men walked in. One of them I recognized. Muscle, not industry. The kind of guy who didn't speak unless it was through his fists. They circled Craig like wolves. "You owe us an album," one said. Craig didn't flinch. "Nah, you owe me my money. No dough, no records." The room tensed. One guy stepped forward. "You sure that's what you want to say?" Craig didn't blink. He just said, "If you're going to do something, do it now." Then, without breaking eye contact, he reached into his jacket and pulled out nothing. Just stared them down with empty hands and steel in his gaze. They backed off. Later, I heard he brought someone with him. Not into the room, but waiting downstairs. A man whose name no one would say out loud. Just someone with heat. It was a narrow escape, but it was the beginning of the end for Craig. After that, the doors started closing. No more press, no more appearances. Rumors that he'd lost his mind, joined a cult disappeared. Truth was simpler. Puff blackballed him. You don't defy the king and keep your crown. Years later, after Craig passed away from heart failure in 2018, an old recording surfaced. A forgotten interview. I watched it alone in my apartment, the USB drive Kim left, still sitting unopened on the desk. In the video, Craig speaks slowly, quietly, like a man who's lived with ghosts. They tried to shut me down, make me disappear. I didn't talk, but I watched. He doesn't name names. He doesn't have to. There's something you need to understand about Puff, about how he builds loyalty. It's not fear at first. It's flattery. He makes you feel chosen, like he sees something no one else does. He pulls you close, gives you the car, the Rolex, the penthouse keycard. He laughs with you, prays with you, cries in the booth while you record your pain. And then slowly, he tightens the grip. You start missing checks. He starts canceling sessions. And when you ask questions, real questions, suddenly you're difficult. Suddenly your phone stops ringing. Until you're gone, not fired, just erased. I keep thinking about something Craig said once in a parking lot behind the studio. It was just the two of us. Cold night, January, his breath fogging the air. This ain't a label, bro, he whispered. It's a machine. And if you ain't part of the engine, you're just grease. He didn't run that night. He stood there, jaw tight, eyes sharp. But a part of him had already given up. The night he died, I sat in the dark and played that interview again. At one point, he looks straight at the camera and says, "There's a list, you know. The ones who got too close, the ones who stopped playing the game." And then he smiles. A broken, knowing smile. I'm just glad I made it out alive. For a little while. The list he mentioned, I think Kim had it. Or maybe she was just adding names to it, one file at a time. Either way, she knew what Craig had learned the hard way. In Diddy's world, silence isn't survival. It's just the space between the beat and the bullet. I remember the hum of the hallway lights. That thin, static buzz you only notice when everything else goes silent. It was late, close to midnight. November 30th, 1994. And Tupac Shakur was walking into Quad Studios with a cigarette tucked behind his ear. A verse half-written in his pocket and a loaded gut feeling he couldn't shake. They say he came to record with Stretch that night, a favor between friends. Biggie's crew had booked space upstairs. Puff was there too. And someone else. Someone no one ever names on the record. What happened next was fast. Gunshots, 5, echoing in the marble lobby like thunder in a tunnel. Tupac hit the ground bleeding. I wasn't there that night, but I've spoken to 3 people who were. They told me the same story in different ways. Tupac wasn't the target. He was the message. He survived, barely. But something inside him didn't. The next time I saw him on TV, bandana tied tight, middle fingers raised, he wasn't rapping anymore. He was declaring war. Puff knew, he said in one interview voice like gravel. He was in the building. And just like that, the lines were drawn. Bad Boy became the East Coast Empire. Death Row held the West like a fortress. And those of us stuck in the middle, we just prayed the crossfire missed. But I remember the studio's lobby camera feed, one I wasn't supposed to access. Months later, during a quiet shift at a nearby studio, I borrowed a copy from someone who owed me a favor. Grainy black and white footage. Tupac walks in laughing, hands in his pockets. A second later, he jerks forward and shoulder blown open. He falls crawling. Blood smears like paint across the floor tiles. But here's what haunted me. The shooter doesn't rush. He walks, deliberate, confident, and the moment Tupac's body hits the tile, the camera catches something else. A man upstairs, watching from behind the glass, too far to see clearly. But the silhouette, tall, broad shoulders, arms crossed, still. After that night, I started hearing things. Rumors that weren't just street gossip, they had detail. Precision. That the ambush wasn't spontaneous. That Tupac had been lured there. That someone from Bad Boy tipped the shooters off. Even Andre Harold, Diddy's old mentor, was rumored to have been in the building. I started putting together timelines, names, call logs. That's when I found something that chilled me. A file Kim had saved audio pulled from a wiretap she said was gifted to her by a PI. It's muffled, hard to make out. But the voices are unmistakable. Diddy, and another man, older, raspy, possibly Jimmy Henchman. Pac's unpredictable, the voice says. So clip his wings, Diddy replies. Nothing more, no names, no dates. But in the background, you can hear laughter. The kind that doesn't belong in a conversation about blood. That night changed everything. Biggie, who'd once admired Tupac, stopped smiling in interviews. He grew paranoid. His verses turned darker. And Puff, he was cold, unbothered, playing chess while everyone else bled. I remember a photo shoot not long after the shooting, white suit's black backdrop. Puff posed with big sunglasses on hand, over heart. Bad boy for life, he said to the camera. But his eyes looked past us, like he already knew who was next. Sometimes I wonder what would have happened if Tupac had walked away that night, left New York, quit the game. But he didn't. He picked up a pen, loaded it like a gun, and aimed it at Puff. Hit him up, dropped like a bomb. No metaphors, no subtext, just war. Names named, lovers exposed, egos scorched. The industry tried to play neutral. MTV censored, radio bleeped. But backstage, you could feel it. Something real was brewing. Not music, not beef, war, and Puff. He didn't flinch. He doubled his security, rented more bulletproof vehicles, whispered to executives behind closed doors, planned the next move like it was a business merger. To him, this wasn't personal. It was strategy. That's what scared me the most. Years later, Kim told me she believed that Studio Ambush was more than retaliation. That was the first time he tested it, she said. Tested what it meant to disappear someone without pulling the trigger. And when no one was arrested, when Tupac survived but blamed the wrong people, Puff learned the most dangerous lesson of all, that power isn't just having the means to hurt someone. It's knowing how to make the world look the other way when you do. You don't understand what silence means until you hear it broken by the wrong name. That's what happened in 2008. A low-budget interview filmed in a dim apartment somewhere in Compton. A man sits across from the camera, thick shoulders, blank eyes. He calls himself Keef D. And after a long pause, he says, Puffy put up $1 million, just like that. No warning, no build-up. Just a sentence that cracked the foundation of everything I'd spent years trying not to believe. Let's rewind. September 7th, 1996, Las Vegas. Tupac is gunned down in a black BMW. 4 men in a white Cadillac roll up, unload, and vanish into the desert heat. It was brazen, surgical, and no one was ever charged. The world blamed Suge Knight, the East-West War, gang violence. But in the shadows, a rumor began to spread, quiet but sticky, that someone had paid for Tupac's head. And not just anyone. Diddy. At the time, I didn't want to believe it. I really didn't. But something didn't sit right. The Vegas shooting wasn't random, it was precise. Too precise. The shooters knew which side Tupac would be sitting on. They knew the route. They knew the timing. And more importantly, they disappeared without a trace. Years later, Keef D, one of the 4 men in that white Cadillac, broke the code. First in whispers, then in interviews. and finally under oath in a Las Vegas grand jury indictment. His story never changed. Puffy offered $1 million for Tupac and Suge Knight. Said he wanted it handled clean. When asked who made the deal, face to face, it was him, Puffy. You'd think that would have blown everything up, but it didn't. Puff denied it, of course, laughed it off in interviews, said it was clout chasing, said he didn't even know Keef D. But I did. I'd seen them together once in 96 months before Vegas. Backstage at a party in Atlanta. Keef leaning in, Puff listening, and that same smile, sharp, amused, distant, like he was watching something no one else could see. Kim had a file named Vegas on the USB. Inside were transcripts, old BlackBerry messages, a blurry photo from a club night Diddy seated beside a man who matches Keef's build and profile. Time-stamped 2 weeks before the shooting. And then an audio clip. Short, 15 seconds. Diddy's voice, don't miss. One shot, clean. Was it real edited? I couldn't be sure. But when I played it, my hand shook, because it matched the pattern. Whispers behind studio doors, sudden deaths with no suspects, and always, silence. After Tupac's death, Puff didn't celebrate. But he didn't mourn either. He just got to work. The very next month, Bad Boy released No Way Out, an album with a funeral theme, a black and white cover. Biggie's voice echoing across empty hooks. The lead single, I'll Be Missing You. It topped the charts for weeks. People cried. People healed. And somewhere in his penthouse, Puff smiled. Not because Tupac was dead, but because now there was no one left to answer back. The more I listened to Keef D's confession, the more one thing became clear. Diddy didn't pull the trigger. He never did. He just wrote the checks. There's a moment in the 2018 interview where Keef looks off camera. His voice drops. Real quiet. Man, we should have got more for that. And he laughs. A tired, bitter laugh. Like someone who just remembered he sold his soul for a price that didn't even buy peace. Kim once told me that Vegas was the moment Diddy stopped pretending to be afraid. He figured it out, she said. That if he kept his hands clean, the world would keep singing. I asked her what she meant. She looked out the window for a long time. He learned that blood dries fast, but money never leaves a stain. And now Keef's on trial, alone. The other 3 men in that Cadillac are all dead. Puff walks free, still throwing parties, still rewriting the past in perfect lighting. But I'm here, still watching, still listening, still remembering what it cost. Because somewhere in the desert, in the heat that never cools, there's a silence so heavy you can still hear $1 million whisper riding the wind. The last time I saw Christopher Wallace alive, he was laughing, sitting in a folding chair outside the Peterson Automotive Museum in L.A., chewing on a toothpick chain glinting under the amber streetlight. He looked relaxed, heavy in a way that said, I've made it. But beneath that laugh, there was something off, something that felt like goodbye. It was March 8th, 1997. The party had been Puff's idea, a promotional event for Biggie's new album. I remember the flyer, sleek font, elegant gold trim, like it was advertising royalty. Inside, it felt like a coronation. Cameras flashing, industry heads nodding approval, women in silk dresses drifting like smoke through velvet air. And Big Man, he lit up the room, joking, freestyling, taking photos with anyone who asked. But Puff, he was quiet, focused, eyes scanning the exits like he was counting them. He was always 2 steps ahead. But that night, it felt like he already knew the ending. Earlier that afternoon, I'd pulled Puff aside. We were in the parking lot, sun dropping low, my voice low. Gene told me something. A tip. They're saying there's a play tonight. Could be real. Puff looked at me flat. Then don't come. I'm going. Your call. And just like that, he walked off. Left me holding the warning like a grenade with no pin. Biggie didn't want to be there either. Clark Kent, his friend, his DJ, had tried to talk him out of it. Told him the West Coast was still raw from Tupac's death, that the energy wasn't right. But Puff insisted. Said the media tour needed it. Said the city loves Big. He sent Big in a cream-colored suit. He sent himself in bulletproof glass. After the party, I saw Puff pull Big aside near the elevators. He put both hands on his shoulders, spoke close. No one else could hear. But I saw Biggie's face change. The smile faded. His head dipped. And then Puff stepped away, called for the car. The SUV pulled up on Fairfax just past midnight. Big got in, front passenger. I was supposed to ride behind him, but Wolf Puff's guy told me to ride in the second car instead. Seats full, he said. We good. So I watched from 2 vehicles back. Watched as the SUV rolled forward. Watched the Impala creep up beside it. Watched the barrel emerge from the window like a serpent uncoiling. 4 shots. Biggie's head slumped sideways before the 5th. The scream inside me didn't come out until later. I just stood there, useless. Sirens in the distance. Blood on white leather. Puff, he was untouched. Escorted to another car before the first EMT arrived. He gave a statement. Cried for the cameras. Said he'd lost his brother. But here's what never sat right with me. Why was Biggie's security so light? 2 men, no vests, no follow car close enough to protect. Meanwhile, Puff had triple coverage, rented private detail. It felt intentional, calculated, like someone had placed Big where he needed to be, just exposed enough for the bullet to find him. At the funeral, Puff broke down, tears on national TV, spoke about legacy dreams, God's plan. And then a week later, he dropped I'll Be Missing You. It went straight to #1. An anthem, a morning song, a marketing miracle. I remember sitting alone in my apartment that week watching the music video. Puff walking along a beach in all white. Doves, harps. He looked like a saint. But all I could see was the elevator. The whispered warning. The unblinking silence when I told him not to go. He'd made a choice. So had I. I stayed quiet. Years later, when Kim gave me the USB, there was a folder labeled Christopher. Inside, a voice memo from Big, date stamped 3 days before the party. He sounds tired, low. I got this feeling, man. Like something's about to shift. Puff says keep moving. But every time I move, I feel like I'm stepping into something I won't come back from. Then he laughs. If anything happens, tell Ma Duke I tried. That was the moment I knew. Biggie didn't walk into that car blindly. He walked in trusting a man he called brother. And that man, whatever he felt in his heart, let him go anyway. Kim once whispered to me, he doesn't kill people the way you think. How then he lets the world do it for him? And now, every time I hear one more chance or mo money mo problems, I wonder, was the price of Puff's throne always someone else's last breath? It was supposed to be a celebration. December 27th, 1999. The end of the decade, the turn of a millennium. Puff had just signed a new protege, a skinny 21-year-old from Brooklyn named Jamal Barrow. The streets knew him as Shine. He had the look, the voice, that East Coast hunger. Puff saw himself in him. Or maybe he saw someone he could shape, bend, and discard. That night, we were at Club New York, Manhattan. VIP entrance. Puff arrived with Jennifer Lopez on his arm, dressed like royalty-tailored white-on-white suit diamond cufflinks. Shine walked behind him, quiet eyes flicking around like he was trying to memorize how power moved. I was stationed near the back bar. It started with a drink. A man approached Puff, said something sharp. No one remembers what. But the air snapped like a rubber band. Shine reached for his waistband. Too fast. Gunshots rang out across the dance floor. 3 bystanders hit the ground. Panic. Heels skidding. Glass shattering. Screams rising in waves. Puff grabbed J. Low and ran. Not to help. Not to explain. To escape. By the time NYPD caught up to the black SUV outside, it was all over. The club was bleeding. Shine was silent. And Puff was already preparing his narrative. In the holding cell, Shine kept asking the same question. Did I do the right thing? I wasn't in the room. But I knew the answer. He thought he was protecting Puff. He didn't know Puff wasn't going to protect him back. The trial came fast. Media frenzy, paparazzi camped outside. Puff arrived daily in designer suits, flanked by a legal team that looked more like a Fortune 500 board than a defense squad. He played the innocent, said he had no idea there was a gun, said Shine acted alone, said he tried to flee out of fear for Jennifer's safety. When the prosecution asked Shine what happened, he refused to flip. Took the weight, 10 years. But here's what people forget. Puff helped the prosecution. Not directly, no, but quietly, subtly, by supplying witnesses. Testimonies that painted Shine as hot-headed, dangerous, reckless. The boy who fired the gun to impress his mentor. I remember visiting Shine once at Rikers years later. He looked thinner, older, eyes dull with betrayal. He didn't ask about Puff. He just stared at the wall and said, "You ever save someone who let you drown?" I didn't answer, because I had, more than once. Kim had notes on the case, handwritten in a red folder buried deep in her lockbox. At the bottom of the final page, scrawled in slanted ink, Shine Pawn, Puff King, same board, different rules. She had a gift for clarity, for seeing through the noise. She always said Puff didn't just use people, he choreographed them, like characters in a play where he was the director, producer, and star. After the sentencing, Puff gave a tearful statement on the courthouse steps. "I'm just thankful to God. I'm innocent. I've been through a lot." He hugged his lawyers, waved to fans, drove away. Shine. He was let out in cuffs, eyes down, no entourage, no applause. Just the sound of a cell door slamming shut on a decade of his life. And when Shine got out, he didn't spit a diss track. He didn't seek revenge. He just left the country, rebuilt his life in silence, became a politician in Belize, a man transformed not by fame, but by betrayal. Years later, in a rare interview, someone asked him, "Do you forgive him?" Shine smiled. "I've made peace with what happened. But let's not pretend he didn't save me. He saved himself." And that's the story Puff doesn't tell. He tells the one where he's the survivor, the phoenix, the mogul who rose from bullets in courtrooms with nothing but faith and vision. But I know better, because I've seen the bodies he stepped over to climb. Kim's file on Shine ends with a single photo, a grainy shot of Puff at a yacht party champagne, in one hand mic in the other. The caption underneath reads, "He sings louder when someone else is locked away." And maybe that's always been the truth. In his world, silence isn't golden. It's useful. The night after Kim's funeral, I couldn't sleep. The city outside my window pulsed with its usual rhythm horns, sirens' laughter that never sounded quite real after midnight. But my apartment was still. Too still. On the desk sat the USB drive she'd left me. Small, silver, innocent looking. The word "proof" scratched across it in jagged ink. I'd stared at it for days, afraid to know what she knew, more afraid not to. I finally opened it just after 3:00 a.m. coffee cold, hands shaking. One folder after another bloomed across my screen, labeled with names, places, dates, each one a memory she'd trapped in code. City College, Craig, Tupac, Biggie, Shine, her own name. And the last one, me. Inside was a video. No timestamp, no edits. Kim seated at a kitchen table, eyes raw, no makeup. Just a woman staring down at the barrel of fear. "If you're watching this," she said softly, "I'm probably already gone." My throat tightened. I've kept quiet too long. For the kids, for peace. But silence doesn't protect you. It just delays the fall. She took a breath. He's not who the world thinks he is. You know that. But what matters now isn't what he did. It's who still believes they're safe. She blinked. A tear slipped down her cheek. I had a flash drive with everything. I told Al. I told Jean. I was going to speak out. Then she looked into the camera, and for a second, it felt like she was looking through me. "If they find this, don't run. Don't be like me. Tell them. The screen cut to black. I sat in silence for nearly an hour. Couldn't move, could barely breathe. Because in that moment, everything became terrifyingly clear. She didn't die of pneumonia. She died of knowing too much. And someone made sure the world would call it natural. Not long after, I heard from a friend, someone in security who still did private work for Puff. He warned me. "You're being watched." Said my name had come up. Said there were questions about who's talking and what's been found. He told me to leave town. Disappear. I didn't. Not right away. I had one more thing to do. Before Kim died, she had been planning to meet with a biographer. Someone she trusted. A woman known for pulling truth out of locked mouths. That woman vanished 3 days after Kim's death. Her phone disconnected. Her website scrubbed. No public statement. No obituary. Just gone. That's when I left. Packed a single suitcase. Took the USB. Went off grid. I didn't tell anyone. Not my sister. Not my girl. Not even Jean. I drove south until the highways blurred into dust. And for the first time in years, I let myself cry. I live small now. Different name. Cash only. No more city lights or velvet ropes. Just a quiet room and too many memories. But sometimes, in the stillness between midnight and morning, I open that folder marked Me. I play Kim's video. And I remind myself why I'm still breathing. They say Puffa is still untouchable. Even with Keefe D on trial. Even with whispers crawling through courtrooms and blogs. But I know the truth. Not just the deaths. Not just the betrayals. But the coldness in his eyes when he watches someone unravel. It's not just power, it's pleasure. Kim once said, he doesn't need to kill you to make you disappear. He just needs you not to matter anymore. But here's the thing, I remember. I remember every breath, every scream, every name etched in silence. And as long as I'm out here breathing, typing, hiding, they matter. This is not an expose, not a confession. It's a requiem. For Kim, for Big, for Pac, for Shine, for Craig, for the ones you never knew, for the lives that vanished behind spotlights and stage smoke. If you're reading this, if it ever reaches the light, just know the truth was never hidden. It was just paid for. And silence was the only thing more expensive than death.